I remember getting my first playlist with Falling in Reverse, my first Radio 1 playlist with Falling in Reverse in 2011. And that led to actually getting most of Epitaph artists for plugging. And so that was the beginning of great things. I am so proud of what we've achieved with Architects. I remember trying really hard, and the first breakthrough was with a single called Grave Digger. So if you can imagine, what can you do with a single called Grave Digger? I managed to get Radio 1 to make it track of the day, which meant that it would be played every day on every daytime show. And actually, Radio 1 got complaints from people who own shops because, then suddenly like Grave Digger would come on and people would complain, people leave the shop. And we got a #1 record, and it was huge. It was a huge moment where you just think, oh my God, we went from 2 plays to getting them to be A-listers. You always think, like, in this job, am I good enough for this band? Am I good enough to actually plug this band? You always have this doubt. And I think it's good to have this doubt, because the minute you become too confident, you might not actually work hard enough for them.
Hey, welcome back to another episode. Before we really get into it, I want to mention that we've just released a vlog. We show you behind the scenes of everything it is, putting this together, taking it to London, filming in different locations, some of the costs that are involved in doing that, and all the difficulties of actually just booking people and moving things around and making it happen. So if you're interested in what goes into putting the podcast together, then check out the vlog. It's available on YouTube. Go and watch that now if you're interested in everything it takes to make a podcast. Let's get to the episode.
The first question then, as always, is how did you get started in music?
So I moved over from France in my early 20s. Well, actually, I moved to the US and then I moved to the UK. And I really wanted to get into the music industry, but I just didn't know how. So I remember seeing Slipknot at the Astoria, and I decided to write a review. And I just sent it in to Terrorizer. And I was just really hoping for good feedback. And I did get good feedback, so that was great. So I started writing for Terrorizer. And after this, I also started writing for Metal Hammer and Rock Sound and some French magazines. So I was doing it all, but I had a career as a university lecturer. So that's why I came here in the UK. I was a PhD student and also a university lecturer. So I knew that what I wanted most of all was to work in the music industry. So that was my way in, just writing for those mags, meeting people, and just really looking at, what's a job that I could do where I don't just get paid 10p a word and, I can actually make a career out of. And, I didn't even know what a plugger was, but I met a few people and I realized that this is something that I could do. And I just went for it. I mean, I tried to go for it. It wasn't that easy until Alison Edwards from Roadrunner Records actually left the label and started her own company called Pure Press. And then she said, do you want to help me? And I thought, why not? And I started to work part-time with her as a plugger. And I didn't know what I was doing. Nobody was there to show me, but, I did well. I actually got to work with Gujira from Master Sirius. I think, in fact, it was the first interview I got on the Radio and Rock show. And so I just started working with her and, made a few contacts. And Adam, Adam Sagir from the Noise Cartel was a friend. He's always been a friend from the beginning. And he knew how good I was because he was a contributor on the rock show. So every time I couldn't get something on the rock show, I would call Adam and I would harass him and I would make him do things he didn't want to do. Like, for example, I remember one time I called him and I made him go to Wales to interview El Nino. He did not want to go, but I made him. And this is when he realized I was good at it. And so when he started his company, he thought, he should offer me a job. And so he did. And this is how I ended up working with Adam at the Noise Cartel.
I love that, man. I love that the idea of just being like, I've decided I'm a writer, so I'm just going to write things and send it off. And it was just that smooth or clean.
But, it wasn't that smooth, to be honest, because I am not English. So it was extra hard for me. It wasn't my first language. And, I was lucky because people gave me a chance. And, I remember someone sat with me at Terrorizer. It was Catherine Yates, a journalist, and she said to me, "This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong." So people actually did spend time with me to give me a chance to improve. And also at Metal Hammer, I didn't get in just like that. I remember actually writing to the editor many times, and he wouldn't get back to me. And one time I was at an Amen after show, and I saw him. It was Darren Sadler at the time. And I went up to him and I said, "Man, I've been sending you millions of emails. You're not getting back to me. Give me a chance," to his face. And then he actually did. He said, "All right, okay, fine. Just write, 300 words on this." And, so I guess my point here is you have to be persistent. It's not always that smooth. And actually, once I got into Metal Hammer, then really things started happening because I was writing features for them. I also had a column called Access All Areas with my friend Patricia. We ended up doing Vox Pops on MTV2 on a show called XFM Metal Hammer Riot. So, things started happening. Like the more you ask, the more things start to happen.
I guess that's a great sort of combination of being like personable and persistent.
Exactly. But there is a fine line in this job, especially plugging, between being persistent and being annoying. You have to do it with charm.
Yeah.
But you have to do it. You can't take no for an answer or nothing will happen.
And I guess Adam knew that you would not take no for an answer.
Oh my God. Adam always says to me, every time I would see your name on my phone, I knew I would end up doing something I didn't want to do that day. And so it was natural for him to think about me when he was looking for someone, for radio. And I'm grateful he gave me that chance because, I definitely would not be where I am today without Adam.
And you've pretty much been with Noise Cartel the entire time, haven't you? From day one.
Right from the beginning, when the offices were in the garden shed, it was me and Adam. And, let me tell you, I quit my academic job for this. And, when we ended up in a garden shed, I thought, I thought, okay, this better work out because, I thought to myself, I've just quit an amazing career as a lecturer where it was a tenured job, professor.
You're a tenure.
Tenure. I was back then. So I did University of London, and then I moved to University of Surrey, and so it was a really good job.
What were you teaching?
Yes, I was teaching French literature, French language, European cinema, and occasionally English and comparative literature. So it was a good job. It was a good career. And so I thought to myself, I have to be good at this. I have to be not just good. I have to be the best at this, or at least try, to get the biggest bands. And so that was a challenge,
And it's worked out pretty well. Noise Cartel I've obviously done exceptionally well, and I've worked with absolutely everybody.
Yeah, we have. And, we started out from the shed. We were working all of Spine Farm record and all of Nuclear Blast record and all of it, press, radio. There were so many releases. And so that gave me a chance to learn. And then gradually moved on to different things. I remember getting my first playlist with Falling in Reverse, my first Radio 1 playlist with Falling in Reverse in 2011. And that led to actually getting most of Epitaph artists for plugging. Because, Falling in Reverse, as you can imagine, is a challenge. Can't play in the UK. Some mainstream pluggers I tried before failed. And somehow I got lucky. And also I tried very hard and it got on that Radio 1 playlist. And so that was the beginning of great things,
Was that sort of seen by you as an exciting challenge to take something that you knew was risky?
Totally. Also, I never had a playlist at that point. So, in some respect, you think, you get the imposter syndrome. You think, am I really going to be able to do this? But this is when growth happens, when you get out of your comfort zone. I remember also working the darkness and thinking to myself, I can't really work that band. But actually you do, because, this band is different. It opens new doors. It opens doors to Radio 2 and, to things that you've never had before. So you actually have to take chances and see where it takes you,
What was the sort of day-to-day like when you first started in the shed?
Oh my God. So in the shed, in some respect, it was quite easy because it was all specialist bands. And by that, I mean, it's heavy metal. So, what can you get at radio with very heavy metal? You can just get specialist plays like, On the Rock Show, and which is not always easy, by the way. It's quite challenging sometimes. But, there is no expectations to get Encephalum on the Radio 1 playlist. You know what I mean? So in some respect, it was a lot less stressful. And we had fun, it was just the two of us. And it was like a small family, the dog was in the shed and, it was like in the back garden of, Adam's house, so it was actually quite chilled, It's actually much more stressful now when you think about it.
How did that sort of develop and grow then from being the shed to the office?
So, I think after a while, we sort of grew as a company and, started hiring more people in press and radio. So we couldn't really stay in the shed anymore. So Adam got an office, a really nice one, actually, where we have video games and we have TV, we have Netflix, we have Guitar Hero, really cool. Also the bigger bands started to come, I started to work with bands like, Architects, Ghost, Parkway Drive, While She Sleeps, Don Broco, so bigger bands. So, I guess more prospect for us.
When Architects joined, were they actually big or were they still?
So this is Architects is probably my proudest campaigns have been with Architects. So when I took them on, they probably would get maybe 2 plays on the radio. They would get maybe, two plays on Radio 1. It was about 10 years ago. So it was a real challenge. And, we went from this to getting a #1 record and to getting a Radio 1 A-list. So I am so proud of what we've achieved with Architects, I remember, trying really hard. And the first breakthrough was with a single called Grave Digger. So if you can imagine, what can you do with a single called Grave Digger? Well, I managed to get Radio 1 to make it track of the day, which meant that it would be played every day on every daytime show that day. And actually, Radio 1 got complaints from people who own shops because, then suddenly Gravedigger would come on and people would complain, people leave the shop. So it's a good story, So that was the first breakthrough. And then we started getting playlists. The first playlist was Doomsday, which is already quite an achievement because it's quite heavy. Second playlist was even heavier. It was Hereafter. And then, then we progressed to bigger things like For Those That Wish to Exist, where we got 3 playlists and, until we got Meteor on the A-list, which when you think about it is absolutely mental because it is the same radio rotation as Taylor Swift, and we got a #1 record and it was huge, it was a huge moment where you just think, oh my God, we went from 2 plays to, getting them to be A-listers really, so.
That is quite a huge achievement to get them A-listed. Could you just sort of explain the difference between A-list or B-list or the different sort of things that you're trying to get them on?
So basically the difference between A-list and B-list is just the number of plays that you get per week. Obviously there's also status that, if you reach A-list, the next time around when you go into Radio 1, you get different feedback because you're going in with this as ammunition. You say, this is an A-list band, you should give us a, hottest record. You should give us at least that, So mainly the number of plays, also the status. And I think it just opened doors, after the #1 record and after the A-list, I remember getting Architects on the Elton John show, which is absolutely mental. And I remember it meant so much to them. They actually said, we don't even know if getting a #1 is bigger for us or Elton John. So it just opened doors because you just say, okay, well, this is this band. They're on the A-list at Radio 1. We got a #1. What can you do for us? This is when you get those results. This is the time to actually keep pushing and to try to get more.
And how do you sort of go about doing that? What's the sort of process when they approach you with the single?
Oh,
Or
okay.
do you help choose the single?
Yeah, I do. And actually, this is why this was one of my proudest moments, because A-list was achieved with a single called Meteor. And I fought for that single. I fought so hard. And, they agreed to release it 2 weeks before album release, which is not a long time because Radio 1 tend to support a band mainly before album release. So if you have the big single 2 weeks before release, then you only have 2 weeks to make it happen. And to get on that playlist, you need to get a lot of important plays, a lot of spot plays for it to be ready for playlist consideration. So we got a hottest record with Meteor. And so in 2 weeks, I just tried to talk to everybody on the playlist team to try and make it happen. And it did. So it starts at C-list. And then every week you fight and you say, oh, look, this is the midweek position. Or, you say, you send the Spotify numbers, or you just, every week you just try harder, and then it moves to B-list. And then the A-list is the hardest, really. And I think it's because we got a number one that we got A-list, So you basically, from the moment you have a single that can possibly get on the Radio 1 playlist, you just don't stop for 8 weeks. Like, this is your life. Your life is talking to these Radio 1 producers, to people who sit on the playlist team. You go see them, you try and get appointments with them, you harass them, you persuade them. When they say no, you keep going. This is your life, So that's all you do for 8 weeks.
Just the enthusiasm that you're saying, like, you go into the fight with, I'd really want you in my corner. You're like, it sounds as though if it was easy, you wouldn't want to do it.
Oh my God. But I keep thinking, if all I was doing all the time was getting bands on Radio 1 playlist, I'd have a nervous breakdown. It's just too much. Luckily, it's not every band that can get on the Radio 1 playlist. So it's only once in a while.
Who is it that you're discussing the single with? Is it the manager, the band directly, the label? Who is it that's making the decision with you?
So the label and the managers, sometimes the band as well, and sometimes international team, like we all get together on a call. I remember, especially for that single Meteor, I remember really being on a call with the entire team, US, Europe, me. This is the one. This is the one. We have to go with this one. This is the one. And also, that is just so much pressure.
Did they have a different idea of what they wanted?
Well, it's not that. It's because I think that, they wanted to maybe wait until the album was released to use that one. But I wanted it before because Radio 1 tend to support more prior to album release. And so I just had to fight so much. And eventually they said yes, but there's so much pressure because what if it doesn't work out? What if you fight for that single and it's not the one,
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the podcast, but if you're enjoying it, please give us a rate and a review on Spotify or Apple. If you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a subscribe. It really, really helps the channel knowing that we've got the subscribers and people are listening and rating and reviewing it. It'll help us keep booking more guests and doing more podcasts. So do us that one little favor and we'll be able to keep booking more people and keep doing more episodes. Back to it. What does it mean to the band's career when it does work out and you do get that listing?
Oh my God, it means so much. I mean, well, first of all, in terms of record sales, I think it means a lot. If you're trying to chart, the Radio 1 playlist will definitely help. I mean, if you think about it, even my mother knows Architects, and I mean, like, because you would get in the car and you'd hear Architects, you know what I mean? What are the chances? I mean, even when you think about it, like, press is also important, yes, but you still have to be a reader of that particular publication to come across it. Radio, you can get in your car and hear Architects, and then you can hear Architects in between Lewis Capaldi and Taylor Swift, and that's crazy when you think about it.
How has that changed then with digital and Spotify and things like that sort of starting to get bigger and take over radio?
Well, I think radio is still important because, I read this analogy the other day. So this is not mine, but it makes a lot of sense. when you look at Spotify, it's kind of like looking at the sky. You don't know what you're looking at. There is so many releases. Whereas like radio, it's kind of like someone pointing what you're looking at in the sky. Like it's telling you, this is this planet, this is this star. You know, it's curated. It's, you know, people have thoughts about it. Producers and DJs have thought about, you know, what's the best record we can play on this show at this particular time. So even I discover loads of bands listening to the Radio and Rock show, for example, or the New Music show, you know, so I still think it's vital. And also the storytelling aspect of it. You know, you're listening to a DJ who is going to tell you why this record is important, or, you know, what he's done at the weekend, or, you know, I think it's still a vital tool in the industry.
I think that's a great analogy.
It is.
What then, could you just sort of like explain an overview of what PR is for anyone that doesn't understand why a band needs it?
So PR is basically having a team that is going to fight your corner and who is going to tell your story on your behalf. This is someone a team who's gonna, you know, is gonna take care of your public life in some respect, and, you know, and who's gonna decide the best approach to tell your story, you know, and to represent you. It's gonna create exposure for you. It's gonna create a buzz, and it's gonna make sure the PR team is gonna make sure you are everywhere you should be, you know.
And when in a band's career should they start looking for PR?
So I don't think they should start looking too early. I mean, they should always think about PR and the way they present themselves. Like, you know, you've spent all this time recording this great music, but you should also, you know, think about your photos and what you look like, and how you present yourself to the world. But there's no point hiring a team until you have, you know, a certain amount of followers, and, you know, and you've played some shows and you have some support. Like, you know, there's no need to get PR when you have 12 listeners on Spotify. You know what I mean? So, because also you only get one shot at making a good impression, a good first impression. So you got to make sure everything's in place before you get PR.
With taking on new clients, is it more you approaching them, or is it them approaching you?
I mean, in my case, it's been me. It's not been me. It's always them approaching me. I'm very lucky that, you know, I have the roster of my dreams. Like, you know, I mean, I've Ghost, Architects, Falling in Reverse, Bullet for My Valentine, Parkway Drive. I mean, this is literally my dreams roster, you know. So I guess because these bands are successful, and we got number ones with Architects and Don Broco, etc. You know, that's kind of like your business card. You don't need to do anything. People talk, you know, they say, oh, you know, who did this for Architects, or who did this for this band? And so, you know, they just come to you.
Do you tend to take on then, because you mentioned the record labels, take on an entire roster, or is it more of a band by band basis?
So for a label like Epitaph, I mean, I don't do the entire label, but I do most of the rock and metal. But, you know, I still, if I didn't want to do something, I can still say no. I mean, and the Noise Cartel as a company has done, you know, entire labels. We've done like Century Media in the past. We've done Sumerian, and also at the beginning, like I said, you know, all of Spine Farm, all of Nuclear Blast. But for me personally at radio, I tend not to. I prefer to pick and choose, you know.
Is that because it's hard to present something that you actually don't think is good? Or is it more that like there's things where you think, oh, it's great to me, but it's not going to get picked up?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to, I just wouldn't work something that I don't believe in, because, you know, I'm a passionate person, you know what I mean? And so it's not going to work. So I'd rather just choose the bands that are gonna where it makes sense, where it can help me as well with my career. Like, you know, you as a plugger, you want a band that has Radio 1 potential, because if you don't get to Radio 1 playlists for 2-3 years, then you become less relevant as a plugger, you know. So it's best to pick the ones that have potential, and and the ones that you think are the best,
Have you had any real disappointments where you were convinced it should have got it and it just didn't?
The playlist.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I have. Yes. I have, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. Like, because this is the thing. Like, with this job, your efforts don't necessarily match the results. You could spend those 8 weeks talking to literally everyone, and they will tell you to your face, yes, I will support, yes. And then it doesn't get on because that day, maybe half of the playlist team is away on, either annual leave or the one rock supporter is not there that day, or.
Does it matter what time in the year it's released?
Yes, it does. Like, for example, if you release a single in December, you know that you're not going to get much love because it's all about Christmas and it's all about, it's a different focus, and there's just a lot of releases around Christmas as well. So it's best to go. It's better to go in January or February.
I think you guys got President.
Yes, for radio, yes.
Is that a different process when you can't say who's involved, or is it actually easier because there's like mysterious intrigue?
No, it's difficult because you can't do as much. So for example, around download, I could have gotten a Radio 1 interview, but they're only doing email interview at the moment. So, they've even offered to do a voice changer. But at the moment we can't do that.
The band offered to do the voice changer, or
no,
the
Radio 1
right.
offered, and so so I think that's limiting, but it's also exciting because everyone's trying to guess who it is, and I'm getting a lot of messages saying, oh, is it so and so, is it so and so, so it's quite exciting.
When they do decide to do voice changer or whatever it is that they're willing to do, will that just make it really easy to get everything you want?
I think it will make it easier for sure. I mean, it's still very difficult to sell something without saying who it is. I think that maybe I think it works both ways. I think that the exciting part, definitely has generated interest, but it's also making it extra difficult.
Is there a sort of rise that you're seeing in sort of the bands with the masks becoming more popular?
Yeah, so much. There's so many when you think about it. But I have to say, like, Sleep Token is the one that has taken me by surprise. I mean, it's insane how big it's become. And I have to say, even from a plugger's point of view, I emailed the manager to say, who is plugging this band? Because I needed to know who did this, because I was totally amazed. I mean, props to that plugger. I mean, Emergence is 6 minutes long. It got on the Radio 1 playlist. I was totally shocked when I saw that. I was like, what? Because as a plugger, you think this is kind of giving you a new challenge, because if a 6-minute song can get on the Radio 1 playlist, then you have no excuse for all the other, masked band or long singles, because you always think, okay, the single needs to be 3 minutes long, 3:30. This is the format. But actually, I mean, Sleep Token have broken all the rules. So even though like Radio 1, when they play it, they cut it halfway through. I don't know if you noticed, they never play the whole thing. It's still amazing, that they managed to do that. So
does that make it more difficult for you, with people being like, well, they did it for these? No.
Oh my God, yes. I used to be able to use Sleep Token as a great example. I used to be like, well, see, Sleep Token, they're massive and they're not on the Radio 1 playlist. It doesn't always equate to getting a Radio 1 playlist. And now I can't say that anymore,
Have there been any sort of examples of weird requests that bands have wanted?
You mean for radio?
Yeah, just strange things or unusual things that you...
Well, I mean, the one thing I can think of is that unrealistic expectations. That's definitely one thing. Like, when this is so frustrating, when teams tell you, oh, how about Radio 1 playlist? And you don't know how to say this without offending them, but saying, have you listened to what they play? Like, have you heard what's on the radio? Like, I think that the weirdest thing is unrealistic expectations, you know.
Are there less radio stations now that hold relevancy?
I think that, you know, as I was saying before, I still think that it's just very important. I mean, if anything, for the look, you know, great looks. Like, you know what I mean? Getting a hottest record is still one of the greatest look. It doesn't matter how many people listen in some respect. You know, you get a hottest record in the world on Radio 1, that's gonna look good in a campaign, you know. So in that respect, no matter how many people listen, it's still very important.
When you're thinking about putting together your radio campaign, are you doing that sort of more on your own as part of the team with the wider press or like wider PR and being like, okay, we're going to have this print campaign, so we need radio at this time? Or does it all sync up?
Yeah, it does. Like, you know, we usually have meetings and we decide when, you know, the singles are going to be released and when we're aiming for, you know, covers. Yeah, we do coordinate. Like if it's a good team, yeah, you will know what's going on with everyone else. But in terms of like, you know, the targets and what you're hoping to achieve, then obviously that's all me, you know.
And do you work that out with the manager or the label, or is it just
everybody?
You come in.
Everybody. I mean, sometimes it's you dealing directly with the label who then relays to the manager. But you know, in the case of, for example, architects, because we've been working together for so long, then we tend to do it all together on calls. You know, and sometimes even by text. Like, for example, I remember receiving, you know, Animals, the single. The manager sent me Animals by text. And it was a few months before, and I was at my parents' house in the south of France, in their kitchen, and I just, you know, I listened to that single, and I thought, oh my God, this is going to be the biggest hit ever, you know, and so, yeah.
Is it exciting when you get sent something and you can hear or see it being played and picked up?
Oh my God, it's so exciting and also so stressful because you think, oh my God, this is a huge hit. You know, I better deliver. You know what I mean? Especially when you believe that this should be a hit. You know what I mean? So,
have you had anywhere you feel like you didn't deliver?
yes, but not my fault. You know, and I'm saying this. There's been times where I've tried so hard, and I know that I've done everything I possibly could, but I still feel like, because I didn't get the result that I was hoping for or they were hoping for, that I didn't deliver. And it's horrible. And this is why this job is challenging, because your effort don't always match the results. It's not in your hand. Like, you know what I mean? All you can do is influence people and punish them, as in like harass them. But at the end of the day, you can't put a gun to their head, because the problem is, it's also what else is up for consideration that week. You know, if that week you have, you know, 3 other big releases, well, then your rock band is not going to get on. Let's face it, you know.
How do you sort of work out what the goals are for that band, and how do you measure that success?
Usually the goals, well, you look at the last campaign. So if you got a Radio 1 playlist in the last campaign, you should aim for that at the very least. If you didn't get a Radio 1 playlist in the last campaign, then you can at least hope for like great looks, like, you know, a hottest record, a live gig on the new music show, or a Radio 1 rock show session, you know. So it all depends what they got the last time, which is why it's important. And obviously defining the success of a campaign really depends on the band. If it's a smaller band, like for example, my band Himalayas, they're a smaller band. They're just starting out. You know, when I get played on the indie show, the rock show, BBC introducing show, then it's a successful campaign for them. If it's Architects, unless I get a Radio 1 playlist, I'm disappointed, you know.
What are the other sort of difficult or challenging parts of the role?
One thing that is very challenging is that it's all about relationships. So you build a relationship with the producers at Radio 1, and you finally get to a place where you're comfortable with them, where you can maybe text them, or you feel like you got a handle on things, and boom, they change. They change every 2 years, and sometimes not every 2 years, but they change often, and sometimes even less than 2 years. Like in the recent years, there's been many changes for the new music show in the producing team, and it's frustrating. Because you literally go into those meetings, they don't know you. You don't have history with them. They don't know how hard you work, how good you are, how amazing your bands are. Like, you know, they don't know anything. You have to start from scratch.
Does starting from scratch, like, do they take into account the past success you've had with the station?
Yes, they do, but you have to have a chance to tell them. And, you know, you can only get an appointment with them if you know them. So when you start from scratch, you know, hopefully for a show specific meeting, you're already on that list when you have a chance to get the meeting and to introduce yourself. But, you know, for playlist meetings, you email them and you ask for an appointment. If they don't know you, they might not give it to you.
Are you always on the back foot with rock?
Oh God, it's, you know, it's so hard with rock because it is perceived that the least favorite genre on radio. And so you always have to say, you know, but rock is huge. Look at the live sales. You always have to be the advocate for rock. But equally, you know, I personally have had, as a plugger, so many successes that I actually do believe that it's possible. You know, you just have to find your people, find the rock supporters, and find them. You know, like Architects fans at radio, they are there. You just have to find them. That, you know, and you know, there was a point where, and I was very proud of that moment, where I had Architects on the playlist, While She Sleeps on the playlist, and Don Broco as track of the week on Radio 1. And I was like, see, for anyone that says that rock is not successful on the radio, well, that's an example that it can be achieved, you know.
What are the sort of misconceptions around your job and what you do?
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of people sometimes may not see how hard you've worked because, you know, you could literally be working every day to get those plays and maybe get none. And so, and I guess it's like this for anybody working in PR. You know what I mean? You are literally paid for your efforts, not the results. And I think it's hard to quantify and it's hard to show, because how are you going to prove you've actually done it? Like, you know, how are you going to prove that you called this person X amount of time, that you've texted, how are you going to prove that, you know?
Do you have to prove any of that? Do you have to put together reports or?
Oh, no, you do put together reports and you can give some feedback, but guess what? Sometimes you get no feedback, and you have to keep asking until you get a no, just to make sure that you can say in the report, well, that's a no, you know. And sometimes the most frustrating thing of all times is the generic feedback that is not quite right for the show. This is their favorite sentence. Not quite right for the show. You don't know what that means, so you'll go back and say, well, what do you mean? You playing this band, they sound almost exactly the same. Why is it not quite right for the show? You know? And how do they decide that? I don't know. It's a mystery.
Are bands, if you put their feedback into the report, are they ever offended?
I'm sure they can be, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if they read reports, but I mean, I'm not even sure anybody reads reports, but you have to send it, you know.
What does the report look like?
So the report is like a list of all the plays, and there's a space for the notes where you say when you didn't get the play, what the feedback was, and also like you would send like, you know, a paragraph of where you are, you know, in your campaign, and you know what you're looking to get next, and you know what's your next goal, and you know.
Do you have a sort of list in your head of like the friendlies, like producers that are the sort of easier wins that you could start with to start building up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's yes, absolutely. Yeah, you always have like the ones that you're the closest to, but like I said, it changes all the time. So you know that list has to be refreshed quite often. You know, so.
What are the other sort of bands that you've had particular success with? Obviously, Architects. There's been loads.
It's so Architects is my absolutely proudest, moment with that A-list and that number one. But also, so a few years ago, the Pretty Reckless was also a huge, huge campaign for Going to Hell. We had like so many playlists, and at some point, I think Taylor Momsen was in Radio 1 like every week. Like, you know, live lounge, you know, features, interviews, takeovers, playlists. So that was a few years ago. But more recently, so obviously Architects over the last few albums, but also While She Sleeps, especially challenging While She Sleeps, because for the Sleep Society album, they decided to not chart register the album. So what they wanted to do is, because they did this format of like the sort of, Sleep Society is a fan community in conjunction with Patreon. And what they decided to do is that instead of, they decided to do it completely independently to be able to rehire their crew post-pandemic. So that meant that the album wasn't going to chart, wasn't going to be chart registered, but it was extra challenging for me because usually my angle with Radio 1 is, oh, look, we're number 5 in the midweek and, look, we're charting, add it to the playlist. But this time I didn't have that. And I guess in some respect, it tells you everything you need to know about the BBC. They still added to the playlist. It went to the B list, but, the song Nervous with Simon Neil from Biffy Clyro. So there was no chart position. They still loved it. They playlisted for 6 weeks. So it was a huge success in that respect.
What was the angle that you approached them with if you couldn't use the chart?
Okay, so that's a good question. The angle that I used was being completely independent, because I think that it is important for Radio 1 to represent all types of, all types of artists, but also not just major labels. Like, you can't have, I mean, you could, but they don't do that. Like, you can't have a playlist with just major label artists, like, so the angle was, look, this is different. This is a fan community. This is done independently. So, maybe this is something to think about. And also I got Newsbeat on the case. Like, they were in the news about the fan community breaking the industry mold. Like, that this could be something different,
So was that story equally as important as the song was?
Yes, absolutely. Without that story, I think it would have been harder. In fact, I did have a hard time getting it on the playlist, and until we got the Newsbeat feature, and then that was the angle. You always have to use an angle. And equally for Don Broco, when we got a playlist and a #1 for Amazing Things, there was another angle. That angle was that the physical product wasn't ready when the album came out, so it didn't chart. And 3 months later, when the physical product was ready, they went to #1. So at the time, when the album was released digitally, they didn't chart because the physical products wasn't ready. And they said, okay, we will revisit when the physical product is ready. And they actually did keep their promise. And again, I got Newsbeat on the case, and they talked about vinyl production and physical products and how important it is. And we got #1, and we got the playlist.
Is that a clever thing for you to circle back to in a couple of years if you've got a band and you're just like, okay, what can we come up with as a strategy?
Well, actually, I mean, this is a good shout. I mean, I don't think people would do it on purpose, but at least we're not scared of it anymore. Because actually, at the time when this happened, we kind of panicked. We were like, oh God, like, I panicked because I thought, again, I'm going to have no chart position to use. But actually now, if it happens again, I know that it can work in our favor.
Was it all of the physical that wasn't ready, or just the vinyl?
No, I think it was all of the physical, yeah. But it really worked in our favor,
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there any other sort of like creative things, either by accident or on purpose, that bands have done that have helped get those positions or get the chart?
Well, I don't think so. None of this was done on purpose, which is quite nice. You know what I mean? But I think that if you, it's always good, like if you do like some kind of, charity, maybe event or something that's relating to a really good cause, that can get, on the news. I think it really always helped because, Newsbeat is daytime, it's around midday and it's around like the drive time. So it's great, like,
Does that really accelerate you getting the playlist in then?
Well, I mean, in that case, it helped because basically when you go for playlist consideration, you list all the plays that you had, but you also list everything else that's quite big, whether it's a session or, Newsbeat feature or interviews or something coming up. This is all very important.
Can you talk us through a little bit of like just a timeline of being like, this is when the band approaches with a single, and it being like, this is when the campaign ends?
Yeah. So usually, we get the album months in advance, and we I mean, I listen to it and I give my feedback in terms of singles, and then they can take it on board or not. It's up to them. I mean, most of the time they do, and then we work out a timeline of what's the best single for radio, what's the best tracks for as an instant grab, for example, And then when it's ready, it's all about having at least 8 weeks between singles, and then you start. I mean, the ideal scenario being having a premiere on Radio 1, like as a hottest record. If you get that, then you are totally set up, because you get 2 plays that night with an interview, and then you get 2 daytime plays the day after, and then you get another play on the new music show. So if you get that, you have 5 Radio 1 plays in 2 days. So this is one of the best way to launch a record, really. Depending on the band as well. Like, if you get like a track of the week on the rock show, this is also great. You get 2 plays on the rock show. This is amazing. Like, but if you're hoping for a playlist, obviously the hottest record is going to be the quickest way.
Do you also think about the streaming services, or is that a different person and a different job?
So no, that's a different person. Usually the labels take care of that. But we do have to think about it, especially when we're offering premieres. In fact, things have changed now. It used to be that for the hottest record, it had to be like an exclusive. But I think that a lot of streaming services would get annoyed. So now it's actually timed at the same time. So when it goes on Spotify and Apple, this is when you get your hottest record play on the radio at the same time.
When bands join Noise Cartel, are they taking the whole service, or can they sometimes just take the radio plug-in and not everything else, or vice versa?
I mean, most of my radio roster is just radio, like Ghost, Architects, Parkway Drive, Falling in Reverse, although we did used to do press for Falling in Reverse. For me, it's mainly, mainly radio.
Do you ever have it where they've got the rest and you don't?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, loads of bands. Yeah, loads. But the main part of my roster is just radio. So
do you ever take it personally if you don't get the radio but they get everything else?
Sometimes. I mean, but most of the time no, it's actually quite rare, because I have such a good roster. If I was to lose like one of my main bands, like if I was to lose Ghost, as you can see, huge fan. If I was to lose Ghost, I'd be gutted. Or Architects. Honestly, I would quit if I lost Architects. You know what I mean? Like, but no. Otherwise, there's so much to get on with. Like, I can't take it personally.
Have there been any particular things with Ghost that you're really proud of?
I mean, Ghost, we're making so much progress with Ghost at radio. Like, there's been a lot of love on 6 Music. Like, there's been love on Radio 2. And I think one of the proudest moments is when I finally got through to some producers who decided to go check out the band live as well. Like, it's been on big shows. Like, Ghost have done like they've curated a whole playlist on 6 Music. Like, Craig Giles as well. Like, there's been loads of breakthrough, So, and I'm just proud to represent this band because they're just amazing,
They've had sort of like a lot of viral success on TikTok.
So much. It's just absolutely insane. They have on TikTok about 10 billion views and counting. They have 8 million Spotify listeners. 3 million YouTube subscribers. Like, this band is just huge, and they are everywhere. Like, when the Rolling Stone cover happened, it was everywhere. I mean, I don't know if it's my algorithm, because, obviously I love them, but it was like, I couldn't open my phone without seeing Ghost, So it's, they are everywhere. And, I can personally say that the demographic has changed, because obviously my son, he knows Ghost because, obviously I promote Ghost, but his friends, they don't have a mom who works in the music industry, and they all know the song. They all know Mary on the Cross. They sing it together.
The demographic, I might be completely wrong, but the demographic to me used to be quite a bit older and more male, and now it's much younger, and there's way more girls into it. I mean, with the club, we get it like requested all the time, but it's always from girls.
What's the song that you get requested?
Mary on the Cross.
Mary on the Cross,
yeah,
really?
That's...
What about Danse Macabre?
I think like there's a few that are requested, but Mariana Crash is the one that like all the girls are messaging. Like every Friday we put up a story being like, what should we play? And about 90% of what people request is what we play anyway.
All right.
But that's one of the ones that will get like at least, I don't know, 7 or 8 requests.
Amazing. It's just massive. And it's interesting because why that song, I don't know. It's not even on an album, it's on an EP. It's really hard to actually work out why, particularly that song, has gone the way it's gone.
Just taken off.
Yeah.
Are there any points in your career that you'd go back to and relive if you could?
Well, definitely that Architects moment. Because it was just so surreal. You always think like, in this job, am I good enough for this band? Am I good enough to actually plug this band? You always have this doubt. And I think it's good to have this doubt because the minute you become, too confident, you might not actually work hard enough for them. But when I got that A-list, I thought, oh my God, I've done it. It was my first A-list and that felt just amazing,
Have there been any bands that were like so big you were just like, fuck, like how am I going to handle this?
Yes. Actually, recently, someone at Radio 1 recommended me to work Evanescence and I did. And, I was like, oh my God. When you think about it, Evanescence, they're massive still, and you just take on the challenge, because first of all, you've been recommended, so you can't let them down, you take on the challenge and it's amazing. You think, oh my God, when I think about when I was younger, if someone had told me when I was younger that I would be doing this job with these bands, I would have never believed it. It's a dream come true,
Are most of the bands at that level by reference?
You mean my bands?
Yeah, I guess like the majority of stuff coming through to you, is it other people just like recommending you personally?
Yeah, it's either recommending or like, Epitaph really tell me often that like they get calls about other labels asking who's done this, who's done that, like, so it's all like recommendation through labels or everybody knows everybody, like, everyone knows that, the bands that I work on, so they can clearly see the results. So that's basically your results speak for themselves.
Do you ever turn anyone down?
Yeah, loads of time, all the time, and not to be horrible or anything, but like I'm very busy. It has to be worth my time as well. And if I don't think that the single is going to perform, I don't like taking the money because then it looks bad, So
is it usually a single by single basis, or do you know that they're going to stay with you?
Yeah, I mean, usually it's single by single, but like, obviously the bands are quite loyal. I'm really lucky in my retention levels, I guess you could say. Like, my bands have stayed with me throughout. I haven't lost many, and the ones that I've lost, I mean, some of them I have been sad about, and some of them I've said, well, let's see if someone can do better. And sometimes, occasionally, I think, you know what, maybe it's for the best because maybe someone else can do better,
Have you had it where someone couldn't do better and they've come back? And
loads of times.
You fucking idiot,
Yeah.
should have stayed.
Loads of time, so it's a great feeling. I mean, in fact, when I worked Ghost for Squarehammer, and then they went to someone else for the following album, and then I got them back for Emperor, and that was a great feeling.
Do you ever point that out?
I mean, I don't point that out because actually the whole team has changed, like, label and stuff. So I'm just so grateful, but actually it's quite funny because, I mean, obviously when it went to the other plugger, I was like, I was so disappointed because, in my head, no one is going to fight more for Ghost than me because they're one of my favorite bands of all time,
I love that. What advice would you give to somebody then that wanted to start off their career in PR?
So I would say be persistent. That is the one. Be persistent without being annoying. Work on your relationships.
Where's the line?
I mean, the line is when they tell you to fuck off. I'm joking. No, the line is no. You can't take no for an answer, but I guess after like 5 no's, maybe you can stop. I mean, like, you just have to be ballsy and charming. Like, for example, when I really want something, I'll go and I'll say, give me a chance. You won't regret it. I promise you, you will not regret it. You know, so if they see that, if it's a mixture of charm and ballsy, I think it can work, you know, but you also have to believe in yourself, you know. So I would say stay persistent. I would say find your niche. Like, for example, my niche is to get heavy music onto the mainstream. This is my thing. This is what's worked for me. Find your niche, find what you're good at, you know. And then obviously, like the saying goes, be so good they can't ignore you.
Before we finish then, is there anything that you wanted to promote?
You mean personally or?
Both, like anything that you personally wanted to talk about, or if there's just any bands that you just think people should go and listen to?
I mean, obviously, I think people should go listen to all of my bands, like, you know, Parkway Drive, Ghost, Falling in Reverse, you know, Architects. I think people should just go and support my bands. I think people should request my bands to Radio 1 every single day. That's what, you know, obviously that's what I would want the most, really.
Okay, well, thank you so much for speaking to us. It's been awesome having you on.
Thank you. It's been great. I loved it.
To everyone that's watched or listened, thank you. We are available on YouTube. Please follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll catch you next time.